Florian, okay, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. I think Randall gave a nice keynote, and he also pointed out what artificial intelligence can do these days. And one of the key points that I want to emphasize again is the fact that he mentioned that systems which are not constrained anymore by the limit of human knowledge are performing amazingly. And so does AlphaGo Zero, which was released 2 weeks ago. And I would like to somehow lead this discussion towards this thought and to understand if artificial intelligence, as of today, is able to help us to not only boost the Net Promoter Score, which you already mentioned in the beginning, but also to help us maintain these extremely fast life cycles and also this complex TV architecture that we're facing today. So the first topic that I would like to discuss with you guys is the current situation that we're facing right now. So we already have a very complex TV architecture and infrastructure that needs to be maintained. And what's the current situation there? How do we do this right now? And where do we already face boundaries which cannot be solved anymore by today's technology? Pierre, you want to start?
Yeah, from our side, we are in the security business, so we protect video streams. We are also in the data collection business because our clients are sitting on all devices that consumers are using to consume content. So we're collecting that data. So obviously, we're collecting huge amounts of data, and without making use of artificial intelligence, it's almost becoming impossible to analyze this data and making predictions on that. So that's a major application of artificial intelligence in our world. Also, because we're a security company, it's important to detect breaches of security, and of course we use artificial intelligence there to analyze behavior and come up with to be preemptive in preventing these breaches even before they happen based on trends, etc. So that's where we use artificial intelligence.
Just a small, does it work? Just a small practical thing. Yeah, it's already there. I have a box here. If you want to interact with the group here, just let me know and we'll send you the microphone. Anyone?
From our point of view of Divitel, I mean, our job is really to optimize the economics of video delivery. So from the problem, what we see from the market is speed to market is critical. And the amount of data out there, the problems, the iterations of the changes is just giving us a pause and requires us to understand where to move and what's going to happen like 5 years from now. And it's obvious that we need to apply the technologies to solve these problems.
You know, my first thought, good morning everyone, I'm Jon Howes from Edgeware. My first thought sitting here is I'm a little intimidated given Randall's presentation and wonder whether we should all maybe just retire to the bar for 5 minutes, let 2 AI bots run through this speaker panel and come back and hear what they've got to say at the end of it, right? Because, you know, clearly we are going to be an inferior race, right, within a few years. However, to kind of give a more serious answer to the question, as in fact, two things. As I was coming here on the train, I read 2 interesting things. One was that Cisco came out a couple of days ago, and of course, with any vendor-sponsored research, you've got to be a little bit careful. But they said that only 8% of data that enterprise networks or that networks in general produce are ever captured, analyzed, and acted on. Right. So there's a huge opportunity to be able to use AI intelligently in the way that we manage networks going forward. The second one was a bunch of universities coming out and saying that actually they are worried about their ability to be able to teach AI going forward because of the rate at which, and the companies they mentioned were Facebook, Google, Amazon, and Apple, were poaching all of their best staff, right? So they're now coming out and saying that in a couple of years' time, they won't be able to teach AI at a postgraduate level because there are so many folks coming, you know, up through the academic system who are then going out into these companies. So that kind of signals the investment that some of these big guys are making in AI and how commercially attractive it's going to be. So yes, you know, I believe fundamentally it's going to affect every area of our lives, and certainly the way that we're in the video delivery business, and I think it'll have a fundamental impact. In terms of our roadmap, we're just starting out, so we are starting to do some work in this area, looking at collecting information and getting systems to learn how, what regular network behavior looks like, and therefore kind of flagging up anomalies. So that's where we are in a nutshell.
Thanks. My name is Kumar from MediaMelon. Thanks for having me here. I think data and AI has a big role to play in internet streaming. Earlier on, we were broadcasting content from a satellite or from a cable system. So the amount of options that were available for streaming a video were not that many. Just send once and everyone gets it. With internet streaming, it's unicast. So there's a choice to be made on everything from which route the stream can take, to what is the bit rate for that stream, what is the kind of device, whether it will be able to decode and play the video. So the number of degrees of freedom is so much more that data has a very important role to play in terms of being able to stream in broadcast quality. And MediaMelon is a company that's working on some of the challenges in this area.
My name is Rudolf Bühler. I'm working for an operator, Quickline, in Switzerland. We have launched a quite modern, state-of-the-art IPTV platform 7 months ago. So we have all the superb monitoring system which are available. And what frustrates me a little bit after 7 months of operation of that system is that even though we have the best monitoring systems which were available when we started that project and that platform, still sometimes we are somehow in the dark. I mean, we have some complaints about customers. I maybe need to say at that point, our company, we have 23 different network owners. So we are providing them with our TV service. So it means that, we have in all networks area different challenges. We have, for every network, we have a CEO who is complaining here and there, and somehow we are in the dark. And what I've heard now, the possibilities which are here or maybe will be here in a few months and years is quite a good thing. So that would be a dream to get known lags we have in the network today up front, then having feedback from real customers, having an idea what the net NPS score will be for the next weeks and months, which we are measuring today after the systems are taken into service at the customers every week, would be grateful.
Yes, my name is Hansjorg Patz. You might ask yourself, what company is he coming from? I'm doing my own company as a startup after building networks for Colt Telecom, for example, the biggest fiber optical network in Europe, and I was having the same experience. You have a fantastic network, having everything under your own control, and it doesn't work. And looking forward to the future, I think seeing with IP version 6 and 5G, which I'm just trying to implement in a network, you will see more and more data coming in, and you will see that we will be able to have more and more big data volumes to being analyzed. And I'm really frightened to see what the artificial intelligence will do to us if they have all these technologies, which will be then available to these machines. And it definitely changed all the behavior. I'm beside that job working as a guest professor in Spain, and to see the change of behavior of the students in the last 10 years using these machines and analyzing my own behavior with these kind of machines and the social living we have. I think artificial intelligence will give us a lot of opportunities, but as well we have to think about it, and we are, Randall and myself are not the only one. Even Elon Musk say this is the worst thing coming up for us if we don't, if we are not able to monitor and steer that in the long run. So yes, it will help us, but to be honest, I better be the devil's advocate in that time. I think we need to make sure that we can handle it.
It's a very good point that you touch on. So the majority of you guys said there's an ever increasing data volume. So log files, log streams, which come from the diverse TV architecture. And of course, this data, as you said, Anders, also needs to be analyzed correctly to get more insights and maybe also experiment and discover new business use cases. But is there also some data that you don't want the AI to touch? Is there data where you think, well, this is too sensitive for an algorithm, I don't want even to have this danger, as you said, that something might come out which I don't like? Because as we saw from the AlphaGo example also, there's new strategies coming out from the game that nobody really thought of before. So what I've heard also in the past in other talks and workshops is that many managers are somehow a little bit scared because they don't know what the outcome will be from such new algorithms and what effect it might have on their business, not only in terms of business strategies, but also in terms of resources and staffing. Do you guys also have a fear of this data analytic devil, as you mentioned? Hansjorg, yes?
I don't want to disrupt these inventions. However, we need to make sure that we can handle it. I think the problem is that the invention time is so fast and so rapidly changing that we as humans can't follow what will come up in the future. And if you see how quick development will be, like for 20 years ago, the first business case I've heard from the IP was, yes, we will have the fridge, which will tell us there is some stuff in the fridge which needs to be eaten now, otherwise it will be or you will approve your list of things you have to buy. So this will come definitely, but the question is, who is doing what with these kind of data? As long as it's human, I know they are only focused on earning money with me, which is okay. You know, this was always the time. The question is artificial intelligence is not longer being focused to that. The question is what will come up then. So how can we control that? Is I think more the question than to stop these evaluation.
I agree a little bit that I don't think the concern is to keep some data or access away from AI programs, because I feel that fundamentally humans and managers are controlling the system. So unless something has gone wrong where they can take over, I'm not that concerned about that scenario. I think what's more concerning is if humans can lose common sense by just using AI a bit too much, because when I was growing up, we used to use, we don't always go to a calculator. So now kids always go to a calculator and they can't do mental arithmetic all that fast. Whether that's a problem or not, I don't know. But the same thing can happen if you keep using AI a bit too much. I mean, as a manager, I spend a lot of time figuring out who to hire, which customers to go to, who to partner with. All this can probably be done by a machine much better. But if we start relying on that far too much, it may deprive humans from those capabilities. I think that's a danger that I think is more practical rather than AI kind of taking over the human race.
Florian, could I interrupt for a moment? I expect if we talk about control and about crossing the line, there are some people with opinions about that. So, because we would like to have the interaction, I'm just going to send this mic into the group, and the one who wants to say something, have a discussion, please use it. Go on, please. And just throw it to the one who wants to say something.
Okay, I was the unlucky one catching this mic. Sorry for interrupting. It's a very interesting conversation, and I was thinking directly of getting to my insurance company and say, hey, can I have a new insurance? And then they wait 1 second, please. And there's some system advising, John, we know him. Yes, no, you better not. And especially the weak people in the society, what's the influence of relying too much on artificial intelligence?
There's probably a very practical example. We can see what happened in politics. We had two major events recently. One was Brexit, the other one was election in the US. And we see what the outcome was. And we also see today what's going on in the USA with Facebook and these guys, where it's coming out that people are using these technologies to influence people. And if you see the huge amount of people that actually watch these fake ads on Facebook during the elections last year, and we see what the outcome is. So those are real social issues that could come more than just on the technology side, but this is affecting all of us. So this is just a comment to put on the floor.
Another point which one or the other might have heard is in China, they collect these kind of datas, and to get a place on the university for your kids is dependent on how good you follow up the machine of politics. And so they analyze it, and you will be treated to live exactly streamlined to what the politics say, to get a place on the university for your kids. And this is something which is in place today. So even that might be a part of our new life, whether it's good or not.
I think, Florian, to come back to your question, as long as there are humans managing the network, my answer to your question would be no. You know, it's all input, it's all data. Great. You know, at the end of the day, until you have an AI bot as a boss, I think, you know, you can make these decisions and you can say whether it's valid or not. I think for me, you know, Rudolf has a really excuse me, good point in that delivering quality is really complex, right? Quality is a function of everything in the network stack. And we've shown over the last couple of years that actually that's a really hard thing to get right. And so there is a lot of complexity there. And if there are AI tools that can help us to gather that data, analyze it, interpret it, repair things that are broken in the network, be that, you know, at layer 3 or layer 8, then for me that's great. And if we can, you know, bringing that back to how do we deliver a better experience, because fundamentally there's still a lot of shitty, if you pardon my French, right, shitty video that people watch on handheld devices. So if there are practical applications of AI bots that can help us improve quality, you know, the user experience, then great in the short term, right? I mean, I think you're exactly right. In 5 years' time, you know, will your kids go to the right university is another, you know, very worrying and very large question. But next year, if I can use an AI bot to increase the you know, the quality of experience that my subscribers get, why not?
That's a very valid point that you make, John, because this is also something that we as a company work on, and also what Rudolf mentioned. I mean, trying to predict what the NPS will look like in 2 weeks in case you make a survey now, or trying to understand if customer X had a service degradation in the last 24 hours. With the current tools and the current architecture, is almost impossible to go down to the customer level. But I think to go to a high NPS score, such as Apple has, and it is a very high score, which we would like to have as well, right? These tools are really, really necessary in our landscape. And I think the challenge here is not to replace the existing architecture and the technology, and also to secure the investments that these big companies have made in the last 15, 20 years, but to build, as you said, a decision support system on top of it, so that still a human can somehow be supported by this AI bot and still make the right call in the end. Yeah, definitely. So,
I have a remark listening to all those discussions, is that it sounds like everybody's forgetting that May 25th, 2018 will be the day for us to just change completely our mind with regards to the data that we are collecting from our end customers. That will be the day where GDPR will be enforced. And so customers will be again managing their own data and the way they want those data to be managed and processed by all those robots. What will be the impact for our industry? That's the question. It's not about the way we will process, but it will be about who is owning what data and for doing what. That's more the question. Artificial intelligence is very, very nice, but you will have to be receiving the consent from the end user, which is much more important than the technology in behind.
You make a valid point there, and I think this privacy-preserving thought that is coming up more and more in these days is also because of companies like Apple, like Google, which are all cloud-based, which just gather any kind of data that you produce somehow in order to understand yourself better, these behavior prediction algorithms. There is a trend now that we also see, which goes towards this privacy-preserving stuff, privacy-preserving user interfaces in the TV industry, for instance, and also in terms of understanding this data on a private level. So letting the customer keep the data by him or herself, that's I think a valid concern. Jon, do you see that as well with you guys?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, we're a level abstracted away from the actual subscriber data, but it's a very valid point, right? It is a huge, and regulation has always not impinged, but has always kind of had an influence on the way that technology is developed. So yes, a good point.
And just to add to it, I mean, it's not the question if we should apply AI. It's like, how can we apply it properly in a good legal framework to be compliant with the market and to be compliant with the business objective of the service providers.
Do you see an obstacle for your company in that regard?
The obstacle is really to understand the vision and helping our clients to move into that direction. Our new digital transformation group is established to meet that challenge. And our vision is to help our clients to go through and walk them through this difficult. I mean, this is uncertainty, no question. It's more like, can we understand it well enough to imply it and apply it as quickly as possible in the business processes?
Sure.
And if I may add, from Divitel point of view, I think it is very important to keep the best value in mind. What do we want to achieve and for who? We do not want to mine data to have the data. What the hell do I do with data? So just maybe we should start with the definition of AI. So I've just learned last week, so there's 3 waves of AI, right? So the first wave, people are talking about automation and reasoning. This is where you start. The second wave, we're talking about learning, machine learning, whatever. The third wave, I think this is where the threats are coming out. People are talking about machines making decisions themselves based on self-consciousness, self-awareness. Do we need to go to the third wave to offer the best value to our customer? Or can we take out the benefits from the first and the second wave and combine that to the best value for our customer, right? That's what we're talking about, right? Looking to myself, I'm already surpassed by the machines. Easily done, of course, but to the topic. Looking at navigation, Google Maps, I love it. It's very smart. It's so smart that when I switch it off, I don't know how to get from A to B. Am I stupid? No. I like to go from A to B in a certain time. I have a time limit. I need to take care of the value that I think is important, right? Which is the time I have to get from A to B. If I take out the navigation for a week, I'm sure I can get there as well, maybe even in a shorter time. It's just a tool, right? I love the sense of awareness and the threat. It's like hearing the government, we need to do something legal about it. Let's try to organize it and orchestrate this because, it's a very important topic. Well, it is. And if you don't know what you're talking about, it's even frightening because you can lock down everything. I think we need to be looking at what is relevant and what offers the best value. And if we can make sure that we can automate, reason, and then learn from it, we can think about how to make this self-consciousness work for us, not we work for them. But that's an opinion, right? I guess this is why we have this intellects.
Please, yeah.
I'm a firm believer that you can't stop technology development and technology. So technology, we can't stop it. We can't regulate it. You try and regulate it, it's going to continue. It's going to run over you. So that's the one thing. Second point, yes, all the data we collect is not just personal data. There's a huge amount of other data that gets collected. I was attending a seminar last week where the guy that heads up the IT infrastructure at CERN in Switzerland was saying that they see a 60 times increase in the volume of data that they have to process by 2023. And he says if you apply Moore's law, that'll only cover up to 16 times. So they're looking for technology to handle all this masses of data that they generate. the guy was saying is the camera that they use to observe these particles that are zooming around this accelerator, it generates something like 1 petabyte of data per second. So there's huge amounts of data. So you need that's where artificial intelligence comes in. How do you process all that data? How do you get something intelligent out of that data? So I think there's various elements of artificial data, and it's not just, we shouldn't just focus on how it fits my personal privacy, but we need to look at the bigger scheme of things.
I think that's a very interesting topic because we have both two components. I think the hardware engineering and development, and also the software engineering and development. And also, in my opinion, these days the software engineering and development is superseding and surpassing the way hardware is developed. So we have algorithms right now which need better hardware to run on. And I mean, this is also one of the motivations for companies like Intel or IBM to develop chips as so-called neural processing units, which came out in the last few months, which are designed for a specific topology of model and architecture. So before, like 20, 30 years ago, it was like hardware was built and software was made for it, and now it's somehow transforming and it's becoming the other way around, so to say. So that's a very interesting point that you make. Something that I also would like to touch is, so the business intelligence and the business strategy that you guys have currently in your company, with such a decision support system, how do you see the structure of your company in 5 years then? Do you have a vision for this? Do you guys already have made a plan for this? Or, I mean, is there a way to plan and also calculate in this development that will come, even though we know that we cannot really expect the major breakthroughs in, I don't know, months or years?
So two comments from my side. One is to come back to something that Hans said in his introduction, which is all of this, and it picks up on the point that Randall made, all of this is moving so quickly that the ecosystem is really important here, right? And it's not just that they're buying me lunch, but this is the role of Divitel, right? To be able to say, okay, how does all of this fit together into a business solution for you, Mr. Customer? So, the ecosystem, there are lots of very clever people looking at this, lots of people coming at it from a very kind of different angles. And honestly, as a vendor, as a writer of software and manufacturer of hardware, we're at the very beginning of this. So we're going to be learning as we're going along. In terms of the business impact, I'm a firm believer that, to my earlier point, if we can get to the point next year where we are learning what normal behavior looks like in the network and providing, to your point, decision support tools to be able to say, okay, this is normal, this isn't, this is what we believe is going on from a quality perspective across the whole network stack, that would be a really nice place to get to. Fundamentally, I think the problem that we solve everything comes down to solving problems, right? There's a great expression in English which is that necessity is the mother of invention, right? So the problem that we solve is still a valid problem. If we can use AI to be able to increase the quality of what we deliver, then great. That's I think the short-term goal from our perspective.
Rudy, from your perspective, from the perspective of a cable operator, how do you see the customer support in the next 1 to 5 years? How will that change with the introduction of a decision support system based on AI?
Yeah, yeah. From my perspective, it's. What we want to have is problem solved as fast as possible, and these days we are too slow. That's how it is, and how that will change as well the customer care department and so on. Difficult to say. I know in other companies in Switzerland that's already implemented to some extent. For our, let's say, rather smaller company, this is not the case yet, and but somewhen I personally think it goes into that direction, and I think the next step should be really to gather all the available information we have today in our platform to aggregate this and to do the correct conclusions and to be fast and gain customer quality experience. That's the goal.
Do you guys think that people which will handle those AI-based systems, AI bots, whatever we can call it, do they need to have a specific skill set which people these days don't have yet? Do you think that a call center agent would have to have new skills to handle, I don't know, an AI bot? Or how do you see that, Hansjorg? You're shaking your head.
due to experiments. No, I was heading up strategic network modernization in a cable network provider for a couple of years, and one of the things once you touch a network is you will have increasingly calls coming in. So it is not a question of intelligence of the customer agent. So it is a question of the intelligence of the systems, and the people feeding these kind of systems and information. So getting as much as intelligence far from the customer premise, or from the call center agent. At least that's the best solution ever. So artificial intelligence or systems can only help in that case. However, you need to handle it and and make sure that these systems provide the right information, which leads into what is happening in the premise of the customer. So at least what is his box giving me for information, and am I allowed to read the information of his, let's say, Fritz box or whatsoever, or what is behind there? So once we start with IP version 6 or 5G, we will have more and more of these things pushing content into the network, and then the question is, how can I help these customers? So the biggest problem is the customer itself. You know, I've seen everything in my life. What can happen, and 90% of these worst scenarios happen where the customer itself. So putting the deck telephone next to the router. Once our technician was entering the room, he put it away. So it takes us days and weeks to find out that it was a deck telephone which he put next to the router, and causing these issues of TV reception. So at least the question is, how are you able to get these information out of these boxes in the home of the customer? So it's not the call center agent.
I can give you an example of how a call center agent can use AI. So we work with a subscription VOD service, and one of the key questions that such a service would have is, who is likely to churn, who's likely to stop using the service. So we collect various data. We collect data about what is the viewing experience, what is the buffering rate, how much time it takes for the video to start, the price points, the various kinds of contents. All the data is available, and we have the algorithm learns about from patterns as to what causes churn. One would think that too much of buffering would cause churn, and that's the kind of information that you would want to feed to the customer service agent. But interestingly, we found some various patterns that lead to churn. One of the interesting things was if somebody doesn't see any video for a certain amount of time, they're likely to churn. But if they haven't seen a video for much longer, they will not churn, right? Because they would have just forgotten about using the service. So there are, we are able to give guidance to service providers on what is it that can help them increase viewership, increase the amount of time they view a service, whether it is fresher content, newer content, whether it is just encoding it differently, whether it is getting it into HD or 4K. What are the various factors that actually lead to more viewership? So that's one way in which we've applied AI techniques.
Gabor?
And then my take is, going back to your question about customer service, it's all about, and then training of the people, it's all about designing a different type of customer service. Because if you apply AI well, I could even be as pragmatic as saying you don't even need first line support. You can just go and design a structure where AI takes care of the first line support, cuts out most of your costs, and you really design your customer support for the good experience, and then have proper people running this.
Jon?
In fact, exactly to that point, one of the first press releases I read about AI microservices on the network was AT&T, who have this workflow system which is primarily intended to support customer service agents or take their place, right? So yeah, absolutely.
Tuan, you also wanted to mention something?
Well, basically, I fully agree, of course. We're aligned. That's one. Hey, surprise. Secondly, it's really the transparency you want to have from the data you get. It's also applying it on a relevant basis, right? It's like your about the router and the deck phone. You don't know that. does the data gonna show you that? Is that relevant? How does it decide that that's gonna be relevant? You don't know that. It's like your example about, you know, people will churn if they are not watching any television or video in, you know, certain time period, and when longer time is exceeding, perhaps they forgot. Don't call them because they forgot. They will stick with you. Another one I heard a few days ago from ISP as well. It's like, so we're also using data sets, and with the customer care, we try to be more proactive. We know what's going on. So there are some households that, you know, we see them reset every day, 3 times a day. So they call them and being proactive and solve the problem to get a higher NPS score. And surprisingly, most of the calls ends up, no, we don't have problem. So in their life, in their emotions, they're happy just to unplug and replug the set-top box or the router, whatever that was. And they're fine with it because most of the time, when you dig in the data, you see them, I don't know, not using the set-top box as a primary device, but, you know, the multi-screen kind of things. So that's also things that we need to learn, is get the relevance out of the data and then use that properly. It's not generic. That's what I'm trying to say. If you do a generic approach, that's where things go wrong, I guess.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, it's collecting all the relevant data and then applying some tool to actually analyze it and, you know, trends. You know, like with the modem that you say, okay, you know, was there some interference, and based on learning, it will say, you know, check this, and, you know, you have to pick up those things. But at the end, you want, you know, and I agree, you know, you want to probably get rid of your first line support, and have systems that can fix itself, or get the consumer to enable him to help himself, going through steps and make it easy. And in that way, you get a happy customer, and then you reduce churn. But also being proactive as well. If you see certain trends, and you sort of say, if I offer this guy 2 months free, then he will stay. You know, or I don't have to do this because he's happy. I just, you know. So those are things that you need to collect all the possible data, all relevant data, and then have a tool to actually effectively manage that and come up with a conclusion.
And I think that's one of the biggest challenges that AI research and development is facing right now, to learn not from expert data, so not a supervised learning approach, because expert data, especially in the TV architecture and industry, is very expensive to gather and also to curate, but rather to go the unsupervised approach. So you have models which, as Randall also explained, learn by themselves from data which was not labeled by humans. So you're not limited, again, once more, by human knowledge and human imagination. That's true. Yeah. Is there anybody from the audience who wants to engage with the box, or should we just continue? Because I saw some hands back there. Yes. Throw it to the ones who stick up their hands, please.
Yeah, I think that most of the problems was caused to churn or are quality related, and most of the issues are related to human errors, mostly software bugs or something. So why can't we start using AI for product development, so that we as end users are getting a set-top box without issues, a network without issues?
That's, yeah, I mean, I know of many research departments, especially at ETH Zurich, but also at other universities. People are writing code that writes code itself. So, I mean, you give a template of code to a program and a certain set of rules, and one bot basically writes through the program. And as you said, there are tests and publications out right now which prove that in certain cases, not in all cases, but in certain cases, the computer is a better software engineer than a human being. So I think that goes right into the direction that you mentioned. I personally don't think that we're there yet, and I think it would replace many of the guys that are currently working in your companies. So, but is that the way that you guys think we will go in the end? I mean, this is again the question of how capable is AI in the future? What will change AI in our company?
Depends on the term that we're talking about. 20 years, maybe. 5 years? No, of course not. I think we first need to learn, then we need to adopt, and then we learn that we need to adopt again. And we need people for that. To understand it, perhaps we need different people. That might be. Or we need more conscious machine to help us make the right decision. But I think it will not be that, disruptive, as you say. It will change how we work at Divitel, that I'm sure. It will change in maybe the things we do. Call it transformation of the digital workplace. That definitely. It will change how we do today, which in the past, I think we say we design, build, and maintain. Maybe we just design and click play, right? So it's a different approach, but you still need the people, the relevant knowledge, and adequate knowledge also to interfere and to manage it to the correct guides.
Gabor?
And if I may add to it, I mean, that's exactly the purpose of the ALM lab, that our objective is not to create a research lab. I mean, we leave it for academics, and I also have a hat of an academic where we can answer questions like how good an AI can write a code. But the focus of the lab would be indeed to improve the quality, to improve the CI/CD process, to make sure that the process is speedy enough and maintaining the quality well. So again, having a lab dedicated with these objectives for speed to market and quality meets the objective of the AI for us in the short term. What happens in 20 years, 10 years, I just don't know.
Yeah, I think also, Hansjorg, you wanted to mention something?
Exactly the point. Presently, and that leads into what Randall says. Remember what he told us about the deep impact to the human were creating the rules. And this was given to the machine, and say the machine was building it. So what we need to do is giving the right rules. And I'm absolutely with you. Today we need to make sure that the quality is right and that we get the service to the customer. And on the long run, but this pointed out today, we need to make sure that we have the right rules for the machines if they want to design the network, if they want to design the services and the quality assurance. We need to make sure that we have the right rules given to the machines. So we will have to have teams of people creating these rules and make sure that the machine is doing exactly that in the frame of the rules we give to them.
So in your eyes, it would not only be a decision support system at the touch point for a customer, but it would also be somehow, supported, and then also a decision support system in the back end, so to say, when coding is. Yeah. Okay. One of the things which I also wanted to mention, also with regards to Randall's presentation. Oh. We have a question, please.
Yes, I have a question. The look and feel is very important for us people to come to a decision. Do you think that machines will do that for us? When I want to have a partner, the look and feel for me is important. When I want to have a car, the look and feel for me is important. When I get a new colleague, the look and feel for me is important. Do you think that machines will do that for me?
Tuan? Or Jon?
Yeah, I think you've got to be careful there. Yeah. Would be my just on a human level. So there are certainly, my first response would be there are some look and feel things that are uniquely human. However, there are, and I think you referenced Colt earlier, right? So Colt are already doing this. Is it Sentio? I think the program within Colt where it's already fixing stuff, right? I mean, where look and feel maybe is less important, where you can be much more deterministic about what the problem is and what needs to be done to be able to fix it. So, of course, there's a ramp there, right? There's a slope there. But at a mechanistic level, at a network level, that's already going on. There are already self-healing networks. There's already AI bots doing exactly that, allowing people to burst bandwidth, allowing people to provision new services, allowing people to, to fix stuff that's going wrong. So that's already happening. Maybe, yeah.
And if you say look and feel of the partner, how did you think the majority of the young people find their partners today? It's not the disco at next door, which we have found our partner. It is the internet. It is a question of getting the right rules and asking the right question to make sure that you know the profile. So it is a question of the interference of how good did you know what your customer want. Once you know that, you can design specialty products around that. So it is one thing I've learned in my time was, and this is something you can't control with all the artificial intelligence, is the people digging the road. So once the service is down, you will get these calls coming in, and I've got this experience when I start with a cable TV. I saw telephony is okay if it works or not. It's not that problem, but there was a woman calling in, and the call center agent looked into the system, say, hey, it is great, we know we have the people repairing these, and it takes another 2 hours to get that fixed, so we will have TV service back in 2 hours. So a good system, excellent call center agent. The end of the day was the customer said, okay, 2 hours, what should I do with my children at that time? So you will end up with these problems anyway.
And I would even go one step further. I don't know if you've seen the movie Her with Joaquin Phoenix. So he's falling in love with an artificial intelligence just by simply conversing with that persona in the background. So, and I mean, there's an interesting test called the Turing test, which was invented by Alan Turing. And this is basically a test for somebody to understand if you converse with a machine or not. So there's a machine and a normal human being. They're conversing with each other for 5 minutes. And just text-based, because of course the machine cannot talk like a human being yet. And a third person has to decide which one of those two players is a machine or not. And in the last 2-3 years, there have been experiments already that have broken this test. So an outsider is not able anymore to distinguish a human being from a machine once they talk. So, and I think this touches also on the emotional aspect that you mentioned. So. Machines go more and more into this area where they also somehow capture emotions and yeah, the attributes that make us human beings in the end. So it's quite an interesting time for us right now that we're in. Yeah. So, okay. Any other personal thoughts on this, John? No. Okay.
I would just add that given the context of a network and streaming. We are dealing with infrastructure that is limited in terms of capacity and resources. So the question is, how are you going to apply that capacity and resource in the most efficient way? To the extent that AI can differentiate between people in terms of demographics, in terms of different content tastes, whether it is device-based or type of content, you can use that infrastructure in a smarter way. For instance, you can cache videos closer to a set of people which is more likely to consume it. So you can use AI to differentiate between people in order to improve the aggregate quality of the service.
Gabor?
Just one thing to add to that is that we should always go back to the beginning of the quality of service studies in marketing. And back in the 60s, we had several quality of service models, and we should never forget that whatever we do with AI, we should always meet or exceed the expectation of the customer. But we should never forget we are delivering a service to humans. That means that if you are having a mismatch in any directions, you might be wrong as a service provider.
And that's also one of the key aspects today. If you look at current models which are implemented and also designed in today's research, 90% of them are black boxes. So you put in some features, you put in some data, and there's a result coming out. But nobody's really able to understand how the machine came up with this result. And I think this touches on your point, so that sometimes it's somehow scary, and you really don't know if you should trust this system or not, and you should really trust this result and what led to this result. So this human reasoning at some points has to be supportive in that aspect as well. John, yes?
And we have to remember people are not rational beings, right? I remember years ago when Virgin Mobile launched in the UK, it was an MVNO, but consistently they ranked higher in terms of quality of service than the actual network it was based on, right? Yeah. So, brand is a very powerful thing, and people are not rational in the way that they evaluate, exactly to the point about when are people going to churn. It's not linear thinking.
Oh, okay. This is really an interesting discussion so far. Do we have some more time, or 2 minutes. So I guess it's the last round of the questions and answers. Tuan, if I would ask you, how much data would you be willing to give up to have a better NPS score and a better quality of experience?
Today?
Personally? Yes, today.
Almost everything.
Almost everything?
Yeah.
Okay.
Why not?
I'm asking you, so
No,
perfect.
almost everything. I give everything to Google.
Okay. No privacy concerns, nothing?
No, why should I?
Okay. Pierre?
Good question. On the one hand, says I'm from a security company. Nothing.
Okay.
Okay, I mean, I can take two answers to this. I also have a hat as an academic. I'm with the CU, University of Colorado Boulder. And when I'm surrounded with my colleagues in the US, they many times tell me, well, I mean, we have nothing to hide. I'm very happy to give my data to anyone and I just get a better service. And I kind of take the European view that, well, this is too much to me. When I come back to Europe, then I have the sense that I do have a different set of expectations for privacy. I cannot tell you why. Maybe it's just me as a single individual, maybe it's cultural, but exactly to your point, we need to look at customers and customer preferences to make sure that whatever we deliver meets the expectation of privacy, meets the expectation for the overall quality of experience. So personally, I would probably give us less data than you would.
Yeah. And I was going to make exactly the point about the kind of regional differences here. So I was in San Francisco a couple of weeks ago, and I asked the guy who runs our North American business how much his data is worth. In other words, how much would somebody pay? He said, if someone gives me a pizza, they can have all of my data. That was it, right? One pizza for every piece of information about him. I'm probably more like 2 pizzas, right?
I think it's a trade as to how much, what are you going to get back in return for sharing the data. Probably more than 2 pizzas, but so just like Tuan, the company has everything on Google Apps. So if Google wanted to, they could read everything, all the emails about the company. I have all my passwords on LastPass, so I don't remember any password. Everything is on LastPass. But I mean, there is a choice you make as to what is the downside if it gets leaked, and it is a concern. If it gets leaked, it can be very, very bad. But the upside of not having to remember everything is more than, it compensates the risk more than enough. So it's a personal trade that one has to make. But that said, you can also have different degrees of what you want to share. Maybe you don't want to share things like what exactly you are seeing, the specific TV show and stuff. But you can infer enough from other data to make streaming better, and there's a lot that can be mined even without getting into personally identifiable information.
I personally don't have a problem to give my data to anywhere. I had the chance to grow up in Switzerland, and there we never had trouble with that. After my studies, I did some time in eastern part of Germany, early 90s. At that time, the people there, they did complain that the Deutsche Telekom started to make a telephone book, which was something absolutely normal for me. Maybe, you might know why. And sometimes that frightens me a little bit. You never know how the system could change, and if this information is used against you, that can maybe become a problem.
Yeah, I can only agree to all of you. It's a question of who is doing what with my data. At least I can stop it. So once I'm working with the internet, it's a question of time and how often I'm using the internet. Everything is open, so everyone have these data or can collect these data, and so definitely the internet knows more about me than I self might know about me, and the internet never forgets anything. So, to be honest, I cannot stop the internet collecting data from me.
Okay.
Thank you very much. I think this was a very inspiring discussion, and we heard a lot of topics. We know the technology is speeding up very fast. We know the possibilities of AI are also in the near future, especially if you look at the quality of services. And if the technology is speeding up, the possibilities of AI are speeding up as well. And the discussion will be about what a few of you already said about privacy, security, things like that, how we cope with that. We are all in a digital age. Maybe one is running further ahead than the other one, but we know what it means. But a lot of society don't. And then AI can be freaking out. And of course the discussion will always be, where will it end up? And how do we lead people to adopt new technology, to adapt it to their own way of life, and to appropriate it in the normal way of working? That's the sequence where we're still working on. And it's going to be difficult. It's going to be long time, going to be short term, and it gives chances. And if you talk about data, that's something which also at the connection with Randall, the discussion, we know that the big companies own the data and they do a lot with it. So what do you share, Tuan? They all know everything about you, that's for sure. But that's something which I always wonder, how can we take care that the emerging companies that don't have the size, but do have the technology to adopt new ways of working, new ways of creating quality and actually value for customers. How are we going to give them a chance to play on the same playground as the big companies already do? That's a very interesting topic, I think. So I want to thank you, but before you go off stage, we have room for another question, maybe two. So if there's someone, especially one who is having the orange box, the catch box, I have just a bit space for a question. Who can I offer the catch box? Ooh. Okay. I think every question is already answered. You did a very good job. Sorry? Oh, over there. Can anybody throw it that way?
I'd like to share with you an historical moment. It was in the year 2002 when there was a telecom operator that went bankrupt. It was KPN Quest, and I talked after the bankruptcy with the curator, the guy who takes care of the assets and sell them off. And he said, my personal experience is the network never runs so well since we sent the people away. I think it's a relevant remark to make given the discussion we just had.
Thank you, Henk. Very good. Thank you very much.